Warning! The following program is not an attack on Celine Dion, her reputations, or especially her lawyers. Any reference to persons living or dead is actually a satire of those cruel people who might slander Celine Dion and who cannot themselves afford high-priced lawyers. We love Celine, especially her third album. No offense, none taken.
Yeah! Oh, scores! What's that?
Now this is Canadian culture. Street hockey is a fundamental expression of who we are, and nothing will ever change that. And nothing can prevent us from expressing our national identity through a car.
Celine Dion?
What?
It is Celine Dion. Hey!
See that?
No.
You sellout! Traitor!
Hey, Casino Rama not good enough!
You're so middle of the road!
You know, we saw her show in Vegas. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, my sister saw her after a children's charity event in Montreal, and she was just incredibly nice.
Wow.
Really?
Huh.
Irish gets paid like $1,000 for every note she sings.
Oh, good for her.
Yeah.
I have a question. How come if a talented Canadian goes to the States, we consider them to be a traitor and a sellout? But if a talented Canadian stays here in Canada, then we consider them not good enough to cut it in the big leagues.
Celine Dion is Canadian?
Well, yeah.
Well, I thought she was from Quebec.
He's on your team.
Did I say it right?
Celine went and Avril too, Sum 41 and the Guess Who. Todd and Joe did super work, as did Scotty and Captain Kirk. Lauren and Lorne, Adam and Anna, Margot and Mike, Dan and Deanna. Yanks all laughed at our Jim Carrey and asked why KD never married. Shannon Tweed proved very racy, as did Carpentier and Tracy. Vegas took in Paul and Kreskin, and everyone loved Pam Anderson. Brian Adams and rock band Rush, Bonnie Fuller and Mr. Fuller Brush, Austinek, the Polka Man, and the band they called the band. Bulkies like Mitchell and Young, funny guys like Fox and Chong. Glenn Gould played a mean piano. Neo was played by our Keanu. Mrs. Munster, Yvonne DiCarlo, Wayne and Mark and Mario. Hull and Orr went chasing pucks. Even Leacock went south for bucks. Music babes, Twain and Furtado. Conductors, Percy, Paul, Lombardo. Alex and Monty emigrated and Rich Little impersonated. Wrestling brothers, Owen and Brett. 50s heroes, Leslie and Glenn. Movie moguls, Louis B. Mayer and Mac and Jack all moved down there.
Yes, history bites Celine Dion.
Nothing seems to get Canadian knickers in a knot as the thought of other Canadians leaving their homeland to go to the good old US of A. We disdain such opportunistic, pushy, greedy turncoats. Unless, of course, they happen to make it big. Then we can't wait to tell everybody, oh, Mike Myers, he's Canadian, eh? Before we can unravel our paradoxical attitude towards our fellow Canadians who come here to the States, we need to understand the attitude of the Canadians who come here to the States. What's the attraction? Well, the answer is the F word, fame. And the other F word, fortune. And thousands of Canadians have come here to Los Angeles seeking fame and fortune because they're traitors. Okay, that was just so unfair. I apologize for that. But there are thousands of Canadians living here in Los Angeles, and you can't swing a cat without, that's Eric Stoltz. He's Canadian. Eric, hey, I'm from Canada.
Oh, sure, I know you. You're,
You do?
Yeah, when I was directing my first little film up in Toronto, I would watch you on the telly at night.
Oh, thank you, I'm flattered.
You're Jay Ingram, right? Come on, tell me something about science.
Water is H2O. Anyway, we're here in California doing a thing about Canadians who've made it big in Hollywood, and you've made it big, movies, starting with The Mask.
Actually, just Mask. The Mask, that was Jim Carrey.
Right, another great Canadian. And of course, Pulp Fiction, My Horrible Year, Mr. Jealousy. You've done terrific stuff on television. And then, of course, you do a lot of stage, and you won, in fact, a Tony Award.
No, actually I didn't. I was nominated, but...
Still good for you. And I guess the question we're here asking, why do Canadians like you move to the United States? What brought you here? What's the attraction?
Well, I was born here.
No. Really?
Yeah,
You're American.
I'm an American.
But you're so versatile and so nice and so...
American.
American. Huh.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. That's...
Good luck with the science.
Thanks. He's Canadian. He's probably just embarrassed to admit it, you know. Maybe he doesn't have his green card. Okay, he's American. Many of the same names that are on the Hollywood Walk of Stars are right here on Canada's Walk of Fame. With me is the woman who maintains this national treasure, Betty Jo Skaggs.
It's a pleasure, Rick.
Now, this is quite a list of names, is it not?
Yeah, more than 15 miles of names, Rick.
Wow.
And believe me, looking after all these stars is a full-time job.
Let's see some of the stars' names. We have, of course, William Shatner, Captain Kirk, David Steinberg, very funny, Nev Campbell from Mississauga, Deanna Durbin, a long time ago, John Candy.
Yeah. Glittering stars in the Canadian firmament, Rick.
Absolutely. And who else do we have here? Betty Jo... Oh, you made the list, Betty Jo Skaggs.
Yeah, that's right. That was a real proud moment.
I'll bet it was. All right, who else have we got here? We've got Megan. This would be Megan Follows?
Eh?
Megan Follows?
No.
The actress?
No, that says me again.
Yeah. Okay, Betty Jo Skaggs, the lovely Mrs. Skaggs.
Yeah.
I see. This isn't really the Canada Walk of Fame, is it?
Yeah, it is. It is.
This is a sad old woman with some bathroom towels and a magic marker. Way too much time. Sorry.
I'm famous. I'm famous, I am.
Give us back the microphone.
From the start, Canadians were among the brightest stars in Hollywood. Mary Pickford from Toronto was known as America's sweetheart. She made so much money from her performances, she was able to co-found her own movie studio, United Artists. The U.S. loved and accepted Canadian women like Mary Pickford, Fay Wray, and Marie Prevost.
Of course, it may have helped that the movies were silent. We shouldn't feel too bad that so many Canadians had to move to California to make movies, because after all, so did all the Americans.
The American film industry began in New York, but soon movie makers announced, "California, here I come." One reason? Early film required bright sunlight, which the West Coast had. So goodbye, New York. Hello, Orange County.
So why didn't the Canadian film industry do the same thing and move west to Vancouver? Well, first, because early film required bright sunlight, and Vancouver... And second of all, there wasn't much of a Canadian film industry in the 20s and 30s. But by the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s, still nothing. Why? It's all rather ominous and covered up. It has to do with a secret deal that was signed behind closed doors in the late 1940s.
The American motion picture industry is dominating Canadian cinemas. So to help find a solution, I've invited up Mr. Hank Biesendorf-Hoffmeyer from Hollywood.
Thanks, Joe. I don't mean no disrespect to you Canadians, but we Americans know how to make movies. In fact, we're the best in the world at that. Maybe even the universe. So if you Canadians will just let Hollywood come up here and run your little movie industry, you know, like the theaters and all like that, well, we'll make sure Canada gets a nice little mention now and then. Maybe we'll even throw in a Mountie here and there. Hey, we can even get one of your Canadian guys we got working for us to play him, you know? Somebody like, maybe Walter Pigeon or Walter Houston. Hey, what is it, all you Canadian guys named Walter?
Mr. Biesendorf-Hoffmeyer, we are going to create our own industry. We are going to make great motion pictures written by Canadian writers, starring Canadian actors and reflecting the Canadian reality. Our taxpayers will see that when it comes to movies, Canada is a world player. Oh, sure, there will be challenges. The egos, the legal issues, training crews and post-production people. Oh, it may cost us millions to build studios and import all the equipment, and it may cost us billions more in long-term investments. And as for profits, they will be decades away if they ever come at all, but we don't care a fig for the cost because this is about Canadian culture. And you can't put a price on that.
And I don't think we should even try. Make sure you mention Sarnia because I'm from Sarnia.
Oh, yeah, absolutely there. What's your name?
Walter.
Walter.
The Canadian Cooperation Project was an agreement between Canada and Hollywood that allowed Americans to dominate the Canadian industry in return for Hollywood mentioning Canada more often.
Oh boy, Ma, we're finally gonna get to see the country. We're gonna get to see the good old
Canada, eh?
First thing I'm gonna do is take you and Pa down for some Cajun cuisine, down to the Big Easy.
Montreal.
I've always wanted to see that mighty river with its paddle wheelers, the wide
St. Lawrence.
Yep. And then we're gonna head out west and see some oil wells and cattle ranches down around San Antonio.
Alberta.
I'm sure glad we got away from that crime and filth of the Big Apple.
Ottawa.
Yes, sir. A soul needs the wide open spaces of
Sudbury.
Who needs the bright lights of London?
Ontario.
Paris.
Ontario.
And boy, when we've seen it all, from
Regina.
Saskatoon. And we got no regrets. We're gonna bust your brother out of that hellhole.
We're gonna get him off that island they call the Rock. We're gonna break him out of
Newfoundland.
With thousands of expatriates working here in Hollywood, making marvelous movies, winning Oscars, Canadians began to ask, well, why can't we make great, high-quality films here in Canada? So, as we'll see, they tried, and they found out why.
With glamorous Pierre Trudeau in the Prime Minister's office, and rumors of Hollywood actresses in there with him, Canada tried to build a Canadian film industry. Hollywood North was given a jump start through tax credits for wealthy investors.
Wealthy investors keen to be part of something glamorous and exciting, namely a tax shelter, poured money into movies. Scores of dentists with cash to burn, which eventually got burned, became film producers. What was supposed to fill a cavity in Canadian culture actually produced an amalgam of bad movies.
3 men dead in as many days, all with serious overbites.
Yeah. I warned him to have it fixed.
What's the motif? Motive?
Perhaps it's got something to do with insurance. You see, here in Canada, medical bills are covered by the government, but dental bills aren't.
That's crazy! Oh, Dr. Larson, you are the most attractive and fascinating man I've ever met. Oops! What are you thinking?
I'm thinking there's something I'd like to do. Something I should have done a long time ago. I'd like to correct that mandibular erosion. Have you been flossing?
Canadians proved that we could make films with the sound and picture quality of a movie made right here in California, a porno movie. Those tax write-offs produced movies which were write-offs. A lot of B-grade American stars came back to Los Angeles with some pocket money, and a lot of disappointed dentists switched back from yelling "cut" to yelling "spit." So Hollywood remained the destination to make it in the movies, and Canadians continued to flock here in flocking great flocks.
And most of all, I want to thank everyone back in Canada for doing what they could to get me here. Thank you for cutting off all the opportunities so I had to go to the United States. Oh my God. To the networks who produced cheap shows and just pocketed all the money. To the CRTC officials who just kept changing the funding rules so our shows kept getting canceled. Oh, to the programmers who put our show on at the worst possible hours so they could claim no one watches Canadian shows. And to the executives who kept trying to make edgy shows instead of shows people wanted to watch. To all of you, I want to give this to all of you. I'm so happy.
If they'd stayed in Canada. Lorne Greene was star of Bonanza from 1959 to 1973. But what if he'd stayed in Canada? Find out when we return. Lorne Greene starred in Bonanza, Lorne Greene's New Wilderness, and Battlestar Galactica. But if only he'd stayed in Canada, he could have become Mr. Dress-Up sidekick Whitey.
These are the films we rent in Canada and we watch in Canada, but none of them are made in Canada. Why?
It's a Silver Streak.
What?
It's Silver Streak. That's made in Canada.
Yeah, well, that was a while ago.
Oh, well, we got Brokeback Mountain. They shot that in the West. There you go.
These are the films we rent in Canada and we watch in Canada, but so few of them are made in Canada. Why?
Unforgiven, Narrow Margin, Resident Evil, Fantastic Four Part 2, Deck the Halls. So they're all made in Canada. Oh, we also got The Human Stain, X-Men, Day After Tomorrow, Santa Claus. That's Canada, it's seasonal. Dawn of the Dead, Welcome to Mooseport, Numb, The Aviator, Dances with Wolves, yeah. All that's Canada.
Thank you. Of all the films that are made in
Case
Canada...
39, Things We Lost in the Fire, Christmas Story, Capote, and I, Robot, okay.
Okay, you know, thank you. And this is my point. My point is that a lot of big popular films are filmed here in Canada.
That's not your point. You said that nothing was filmed here.
Yeah, that's a new... Okay. My point is that Canada has a thriving film industry, but it's in the same sense that we have a thriving auto industry.
You have completely changed your argument, dude.
Could we just cut to me in front of an auto plant or something?
Okay.
You could argue that the Ford plant in Oakville or the Toyota plant in Alliston are making Canadian cars, and in that sense, yes, there is a Canadian film industry, but they're not really making Canadian cars, and there isn't really a Canadian film industry. I mean, you don't watch the movie and they say, well, here we are in Toronto, or good to be back home.
Anyway, what about the films of David Cronenberg or Adam McGowan's films? I mean, there are some films being made in Canada.
Do you mind? There are some Canadian films being made today, but for decades, the only real source of Canadian film was the National Film Board. Award-winning documentaries, Oscar-winning animation, starting with the groundbreaking work of Norman McLaren.
Who? Who's Norman McLaren?
Watch and learn.
From 1942 on, Norman McLaren created some of the most groundbreaking animation ever. He made scores of movies and won hundreds of awards, including an Oscar and a Palme d'Or from the Cannes Film Festival. While other American animators concentrated on traditional cell animation, McLaren experimented with stop action and even drawing or scratching directly into the film. He was the first of many Canadians fascinated by animation.
Today, Sheridan College in Oakville, Ontario produces scores of world-class animators for Canadian companies and, of course, for Disney. Nick Grenier is a Sheridan graduate and one of the top animators at Disney here in Los Angeles. He created such characters as Jafar in Aladdin and Lumiere the Candlestick in Beauty and the Beast. We've dropped by to his LA mansion to talk with him about animation.
Hello?
Nick, it's Rick Greene.
Who?
From History Bites.
Who?
In Canada.
Who?
The show we were doing an interview about animation today.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
It's still closed.
No, I mean, go ahead with the first question.
So, Nick, tell me why you made the decision to work in the United States and what that move has meant for you.
Well, Walter, that's a very interesting question with a very interesting, fairly complex, and somewhat shocking answer.
Uh-huh.
Unfortunately, I'm kind of busy right now, with being rich and successful and very busy and all, and so that's really all I can tell you.
Okay, well, thanks so much. Thanks for talking with us, buddy. Take care, Nick. But not all of our animators have gone south. Bryce Hallett is another Sheridan graduate who stayed in Canada. Let's talk to him about his success. Bryce.
Yes?
It's Rick Greene.
Oh, hey, Rick.
I wanted to talk to you for a sec about animators like yourself who stayed in Canada and made it big.
Oh, fantastic. I think it's so important to discuss these issues. I'll be right down.
Bryce is a class guy, and
Hi, Rick. I can't talk very long, but my shift ends at 6. I'll answer your questions if you buy me a coffee.
Yeah, sure.
Thanks. Oh, and a donut. I'd really love a donut.
Thanks so much. No problem. Oh, so
in 1912, Raul Bareilles, he's this French Canadian. He was a cartoonist and a painter. He created the peg bar system, which is these little perforations here so you can get registered, which meant you could draw backgrounds in one layer and you can draw characters in another instead of having to draw every single frame. Could you imagine drawing every single frame of a Disney movie? That's thousands and thousands of drawings, which would be crazy. So thanks to him, we don't have to do that. Then nothing really happens in Canada, though, because Americans own all our theater chains and they don't want competition. But in 1939, they create the NFB.
Right.
And they bring in Norman McLaren. Norman McLaren, hugely influential to all these animators, even to Walt Disney, but not voted the greatest Canadian. Can you imagine that? So then Nelvana comes up, and they start working on a film with rock and roll, which kind of has these rat-like guys. It was really cool looking. It wasn't the greatest film, though, but it trained all these animators. They do, like, these little shorts, like Cosmic Christmas and Romeo and Juliet with, like, the robots. They even did this short cartoon for the Star Wars Christmas special. That thing is totally unwatchable, but it's just really cool. It's like you see Boba Fett before Empire Strikes Back even comes out, which is like, you know, Geek City. But
as Bryce pointed out, eventually, Canada has become a world leader in animation. Companies like Nelvana, CNR, and Decode produce dozens of cartoon shows for kids and adults. As I said to Bryce when he took a breath, Canada excels in niche television like skit comedy, documentaries, news programs. And Bryce said, oh, and don't forget animation. Compared to America, the Canadian entertainment industry, not just film, but television and before that radio, has been less about making a profit and more about holding the country together. Kind of like the railways.
In America, the railway was seen first as a source of economic growth and power. In Canada, the railway was seen as a political statement, a vehicle to bind the nation. Later, CBC Radio and CBC Television were created to further strengthen Confederation. In fact, the CBC Radio network was built by the Canadian National Railway.
Welcome to the CN Railway Network, entertaining passengers who are sick of looking at our beautiful country.
Yes, sir, we had ourselves a baseball team, and our first baseman, I'll never forget his name there. It was Who. Can you believe that? His name was Who. That's right, Who. No, his name was Who. And, that's right. His name's Who. I can't, could you believe that? Who? I don't know. I've never heard of another fella named Who, let alone a baseball player named Who. Anyway, and, yeah, I'm telling you, Who was his name. And, on the second base there, we had a fellow named Watt. And, just like that James Watt there, that guy that ran the steam engine there, and, he used to throw the ball to Who. If you remember, Who was the first baseman.
If they'd stayed in Canada. Director James Cameron won the Oscar as Best Director for Titanic, another feather in the cap of the mind behind The Terminator and Aliens. But what if he'd stayed in Canada? The answer when we return. Director James Cameron directed the harrowing undersea story of The Abyss. But if he'd stayed in Canada, he could have been the writer and director of Beachcombers, the movie.
And so what would be on second? And I was right there. His name was Watt. And then, of course, you'd go on to the third baseman. So you had Who was.
Now, the CBC has a mandate. It has to reflect Canadian culture back to Canadians, which means it has to be politically correct. But that's why when people ask me, well, how come there's no such thing as a good Canadian sitcom? Oh, except Corner Gas, I love that. How come we don't have good sitcoms here? I always say, well, imagine that the creators of, say, Cheers had come to the CBC instead of NBC.
I'll get right to it. I'm so excited. My show is called Cheers, and it's set in a bar called Cheers where everybody knows your name.
The CBC cannot be seen to be promoting drinking.
We run announcements to warn people against drinking and driving.
Yeah, we run them during the hockey games.
Yeah, between the beer ads.
Okay, well, sure, we could set it in a restaurant then, okay? Anyway, the head bartender, or maitre d', his name's Sam Malone, and he's a recovering alcoholic.
Alcoholism is a disease.
My father died of alcoholism.
Well, Sam was an ex-baseball player.
You know what? I'm just thinking here, Canada's national sport is lacrosse. Can we work that in somehow?
Okay, yeah, sure. Yeah. Sam's a ex-lacrosse player, and he's a real babe hound. He loves
Babe hound.
Libertine?
Okay, the CBC cannot be seen to be promoting sex out of wedlock.
Or sex.
Or wedlock.
Okay, but Sam hires this blonde waitress named Diane, okay, and she fancies herself to be this real intellectual, but really, she's just as driven by her hormones as Sam is.
Can I say something? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's 1985, okay? I think that women can be portrayed in a more positive light than as the blonde, sex-obsessed bimbo that was popular in the 1950s.
Hear, hear.
But there's this fat guy named Norm who comes into the bar.
Obesity is a disease.
My mother died of obesity.
Oh, John.
My fat cousin sat on her.
Oh, John. Oh, John. So, we agree. that Woody should be smart so we don't offend stupid people, and lose Cliff, the boring postman, is a tire cliche, and giving Carla, the Italian waitress, 6 children would be tantamount to saying that we endorse divorce and loose behavior. So.
On the other hand, it could mean that we see women as powerful and not needing men.
On the other hand, it could be seen as a slight against the Catholic Church's stand on sexual abstinence.
Right. Well, on the other hand, having 6 kids could be seen as like supporting the Catholic Church's stand on abstinence.
Yeah, the point is, it's not funny. I'm not laughing.
No.
Yeah.
Just not, I know.
Chuck's not laughing. He knows funny. Did you laugh, Chuck?
Sorry, no.
No.
Despite all the extra considerations and regulations that Canadian broadcasters face, we have produced some of the most innovative television in the world.
The American show Cold Case was so close to the Canadian show Cold Squad, there was talk of legal action. Years before Law and Order or Hill Street Blues, we did Night Heat. Who Wants to Be a Millionaire is obviously a thinly disguised update of Bumper Stumpers. The American CSI franchise is clearly patterned after the Canadian show Wojak. And that's not all.
Have you ever noticed that the NHL on ESPN is just nothing but a ripoff of the National Hockey League on CBC? Come on, they even got the same team names we do. And their guys got the same names as we do. They act just like us. I tell you, somebody ought to do something. That steams me.
I suppose you could argue the American equivalent of the CBC is PBS. After all, thoughtful programming, a clear mandate, underfunded, underwatched. I'm always amazed how many Canadians pledge money to support PBS. I remember hearing that the Buffalo PBS station was making more from Canadian pledges than from Americans. Mind you, they were in Canadian dollars. But it gets crazier. Guess what has been the #1 show on a slew of PBS stations?
Canada's longest-running comedy series was a #1 hit on many PBS stations. And Red Greene was unabashedly Canadian, even when he was getting bashed.
Americans love Canadian comedians. Today, there's Jim Carrey and Mike Myers. Back in the 1980s, there was Michael J. Fox and John Candy. In the 1970s, it was David Steinberg and Lorne Michaels. And back in the 1880s, there was Marie Dressler, a gal from Cobourg, Ontario, who looked like David Steinberg. Marie went from a vaudeville star to a silent movie star.
Oh yeah, Canadians have always been great at comedy. In fact, the kind of physical comedy that is synonymous with silent film was perfected by another Canadian, Max Sennett, at his Keystone Studios.
Canada's Max Sennett cruised to California with his kooky Confederates to create the Keystone Cops, crashing cars in chaotic comedy.
So the question is, what is Canadian culture about? Or about? One area you'll find some answers is in music. After all, we're a nation with something like 30 versions of our national anthem. There is tons of Canadian music by Canadian musicians thanks to Canadian content quotas, or CanCon rules.
Oh, CanCon rules, you require us to play 35% Canadian each day. Both the lyricist and the songs to Smith must from the true North hark. And the producer, or the one who sings from C to a C sharp. Gord, keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada and the CRTC. Now let's download 35% for free. Car!
Don't tell Cindy I said a Danish. Danish prunes. Yes.
Oh, welcome back to CNUK, where we play 100% Canucks all the time. Opening the set, you heard the Guess Who singing American Woman, followed by Art Bergman's Bound for Vegas, and the tragically hip with New Orleans is Sinking. Then we had the Demonics with their classic 1979 hit, New York City. Patsy Gallant took us from New York to L.A., followed by a little drinking in L.A. with Brand Van 3000 picking up the tab. And we wrapped up on an ultra-patriotic tone with 80s punk band The New Canadians and their hit, Hawaii. It doesn't get any more Canadian than that, folks. And coming up, a change of pace as Gordon Lightfoot sings The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, the tale of a tragic American shipwreck.
One group of Canadians who have proved popular with Americans are our very own Bare Naked Ladies.
Bare Naked Ladies, are they here? I love them.
Yeah, no, I didn't mean the group, the Bare Naked Ladies. I meant like, bare naked ladies. Like nude women.
What? Nude women?
Yeah, I like it.
Yes, the Canadian actresses, starlets, and models who made their fortune by flashing their flesh. That's coming up. Just not on this channel. I mean, really, this is a history show. If they'd stayed in Canada. As the first baby born on Canada Day of 1967, Pamela Anderson has celebrated her nationality with pride, modeling in the U.S., and then bursting into superstardom on Baywatch. But what if she'd stayed in Canada? Pamela Anderson made Hollywood headlines for her twin talents, acting and getting involved with wild and dangerous guys. But if she'd stayed in Canada, she could have let it all hang out with our own swaggering wicked bad boy and become Mrs. Stephen Harper.
So far in our survey of Canadians who've gone to the States, we've looked at celebrities, movie stars, and actors. But what about the great minds and academics like media guru Marshall McLuhan, economist John Kenneth Galbraith, and John Humphrey, who headed up the team that created the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights? Shouldn't we salute these great minds? Or should we look at sports? Sports!
Golf was around before hockey was invented in the 1800s, but golf required land. And in the 1800s, the land in Canada was covered in trees, rocks, stumps, so golf was a challenge. Hockey, on the other hand...
This is the goal. And what you want to do is you want to use your stick to whack the puck into the goal.
What the puck?
The puck! Oh, forgot to explain the puck. I'm sorry. Now, due to a lack of availability of balls here in the colonies, we're going to use a lump of moose poo. But I just thought that puck sounded nicer, don't you?
Not really.
Not really.
All right, let's have some hockey practice here, okay? And go!
I scored it!
Maybe this would work better in January when everything's frozen.
And as every Canadian knows, thanks to the historic of it, basketball was invented by Canadian James Naismith, though he was in the States at the time. 115 years later, Steve Nash is twice named the MVP of the NBA. And, well, okay, he had to go to the States to do it.
A European import that landed first in Canada was rugby. It evolved into Canadian football. Then, in 1875, the McGill University team challenged some chaps from Harvard to a friendly game.
Excuse me, sir. Do you have a permit? Oh, hey, Bryce. How's it going? Do you have a permit to?
Yeah, we got a permit. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh, it's him again.
Great game, eh? Fraser!
Oh, yes, yes.
What do you guys think of our Canadian game?
Oh, lovely.
Absolute corker of a game.
But a few of our chaps are wondering if perhaps we couldn't make a few changes the next time.
Changes?
Well, tweaks, really. You see, we do get tired.
Yes, I'm absolutely, utterly fatigué.
Yes, exactement, Niles, exactement. I'm thinking along the lines of a smaller field, perhaps. That way we don't have to run quite so far.
Egabs, yes. And tout tetra, an extra down. That way we wouldn't have to work quite so hard for each play.
Yes. And fewer men on the field. With all those extra players, it gets quite confusing. Yes.
Yes. Oh, and here's one. What about after each play, we stand around a while and wait for the replay?
Replay?
Yes.
Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Now, those cheerleaders over there, they are quite delightful, yes.
Yeah.
Although one of them actually exposed herself.
Oh, yes, quite right, Niles. She had a costume malfunction. I quite clearly caught a glimpse of her shin.
Well, but you did like the game, though.
Oh, yes, loved it.
Marvy.
Personally, as a season's ticket holder, I think the CFL game is way better than American football. It's 3 downs, put up or shut up. And maybe I should shut up because a lot of the players are American. Now, of course, there are some Canadians in the CFL. As for basketball, the one professional Canadian team, pretty well all Americans. But hey, the MVP in the NBA for 2 years running, Steve Nash, a Canadian. Canadian? Who wants a beer? Yeah!
So the only truly American sport is baseball. Well, not quite. The baseball glove? It's a Canadian invention. The world's finest baseball bat? Made in Canada. The Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame? It's in Canada. Although Americans declared baseball to be their national game in the 1870s, the history of the game goes back 2 generations before that. In fact, the earliest recorded game of baseball was played in the 1830s in a town called Beachville, Ontario.
And Ontario is in Canada. Batter up.
And Saskatchewan's W.P. Kinsella wrote the ultimate American sports mythology story, Shoeless Joe, filmed as Field of Dreams. Build it and they will come out. Build it and they will come out. Build it and they will come out.
Come what?
Come out.
Why do you say out so funny?
What?
Out. It sounds funny when you say it. Say about.
About.
Okay, you're funny.
That does it. I'm out of here.
I'm out of here. That's fun. What is it with you Canadians and your oots and boots? That's funny. Get out of here. I'm waiting for another voice.
Of course, Canadians have gone to the United States for more than just sports and showbiz.
Thousands of Canada's best and brightest minds went to work for NASA on the space program after Ottawa cut back on aerospace projects here. And after sending the Canada arm into space, we sent the Canada legs, torso, and head of Mark Garneau, Roberta Bondar, Chris Hadfield, Julie Payette, and others. But they were hardly the first Canadians in space. After all, there was Lorne Greene, William Shatner, Leslie Nielsen, Walter Pidgeon, Keir Dullea, and Colin Mockery.
Not really, but hey, that was kind of funny.
No, it wasn't. Hey, Rick.
Hey, Colin.
The best baseball bat in the world. Yeah. Made in Canada.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Yeah, where's your funny laugh now, funny man? Yeah, one more ball joke, come on! Come on, I want to hear it!
Oh, my face, my beautiful face.
Colin, would you mind just finishing off the segment? That would be great.
Oh, sure. Whose line is it anyway?
That's very
no,
clever.
Seriously, whose line is it?
It's yours. It's on the cue card.
Oh, so I just read the lines on that card?
Yeah, where it says Rick. Still rolling.
Killed deer. Crap. Keir Dullea went on to star in another series set on a spaceship, Star Lost, one of the worst TV shows in history. Really, I kind of liked it. The fact is, the reason to go to the States is being the bigger market and the bigger bucks. No kidding. But personally, money is fine, but when people say to me, Rick, why don't you work in the States? That should be Colin, right? I tell them I'd rather have the freedom we enjoy in Canada to create programs that are challenging and different. Oh, come on. What loser wrote this crap?
I thought it was kind of...
Oh, yeah.
Oh!
I get paid for this, right?
That's another good one. You're too much.
If they'd stayed in Canada.
Kiefer Sutherland. Like his father, Donald Sutherland, he found fame in the States, first as a young gun, then as savior of modern America on 24. But what if he'd stayed in Canada? The answer when we return. Kiefer Sutherland, the tortured hero who uses torture to save America in under 24 hours. But if he'd followed his mother, acting legend Shirley Douglas, and stayed in Canada, he'd play Jack Bauer, a Mountie who saves Canada from separatists in under 24 months.
My point is, Canadian cultural figures travel as easily across the 49th parallel as Captain Kirk travels across the entire galaxy. Because, like every alien race they encounter on Star Trek, we miraculously speak the same language and have so much in common.
Canada and the United States are both former British colonies of roughly the same size who faced many of the same issues: immigration, gold rushes, natives, westward migration, transcontinental railways and highways, multiple cultures, and Pamela Anderson.
Given all we have in common, it's no wonder we enjoy so many of the same things. In fact, as we've seen, a lot of what Americans enjoy on the big screen and the little screen, on their iPods and on the playing fields, was created for them by Canadians. But there's a dilemma. The Canadian government can regulate that our movies and our television shows reflect Canadian culture and that our sports teams meet certain quotas, but you can't mandate what people are going to watch. I mean, the pop in pop culture refers to popular.
Okay, there you go. This is Star Wars Revenge of the Sith and King Kong. And these are due back Thursday.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can just pick these up at the CRTC counter.
The CRTC counter?
Hello, Mr. Jeffries. May I ask you what the purpose of your movie rental is today?
I'm sorry?
Business or pleasure?
Pleasure.
Oh dear. So while you're watching these movies, you won't be bringing any business into Canada?
Well, no.
Not creating any jobs, for instance?
No.
Oh dear, 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 dear. Well, let's check your CanCon. Okay, you've got 2 movies today. You've got King Kong and Star Wars. These movies are American.
Actually, Star Wars is from a galaxy far, far away.
Sir, the rules clearly stipulate that any movie viewed for pleasure must contain at least 30% Canadian pleasure. So, I see you're a fan of the action sci-fi. Can we just throw in a Canadian film in there? How about The Cube?
No, I don't want The Cube.
Oh, you'll like The Cube.
I've seen The Cube. I don't want The Cube.
Wonderful film, The Cube, made in Canada.
The Cube is fine. I don't want to see The Cube again.
Okay, here's what let's do. We'll chop off the last 40 minutes of the Revenge of the Sith. We'll splice in the end of The Cube. You got 30% Canadian content right there.
No.
In that case, I just can't approve your rental, sir.
Fine, I'll take The Cube.
Alrighty then. Here are your discs. Here's your ET-708A form, your citizenship declaration form, and your oath of loyalty. And we'll take these and we'll process these, and we'll have these back to you before the decision deadline.
When's that?
Next March.
Probably worth remembering, we're talking about the entertainment industry. Show business is a business. Would we apply the same standards to other businesses? Would we criticize a Canadian furniture manufacturer for producing French provincial furniture?
If people buy Ottomans, they are supporting the Ottoman Empire.
Yes, many Canadian talents come here to Hollywood, but maybe that's good. Maybe Canadians aren't so much being absorbed by American culture as subverting it, right under their noses.
Canada's Joe Shuster co-created a superhero who's actually polite, Superman.
For Better or Worse by Canada's Lynn Johnson is the archetype of the middle-class American family, and Lynn was a pioneer in adding a gay character to her strip. Canada's Eric McCormick played the first openly gay lead character on American primetime TV.
And then there's director Norman Jewison.
Every film he makes is an icon of American culture, and every film he makes pushes American culture to the limits.
In his movies, director Norman Jewison has taken on corrupt American corporations, political corruption, the American justice system, America's war in Vietnam, religious scandals, America's Cold War with communism, war criminals in America, violence in American entertainment, American labor unions, and sexism and racism in America.
I remember the first year they announced that more Canadian kids were playing baseball than hockey, and yet we don't consider baseball to be Canadian. And the same thing applies in the arts. If anything that's part of Canadian culture is also part of American culture, then it isn't really Canadian. Oh, they don't have igloos? Okay, then igloos, they're ours. Imagine if these standards had been applied to artists of the past.
Good morning, Shakespeare. Prithee, have a seat. Here at the English Theatre Funding Agency, well, we have a mandate, true and good, to fund great English work. And I'm afraid your plays are just not English enough, alas.
Not English enough? Are thy wits addled? You have me, an English writer, 20 English actors, all upon an English stage, in London, the fair capital of this sceptred isle. How much more English dost thou want?
It's the subject matter where these plays most grievously miss their mark. Take this Hamlet guy here, who doth take craggy Denmark as his home. I mean, Denmark? Please, 'tis small wonder he has lost his mirth. And then there is this merchant of Venice. The bloke is an eye-tie. Why not make him the merchant of Ipswich? Or the vendor of Bolton? Yes? And look you here, Julius Caesar? Another Italian story? And then there's this Romeo and Juliet couple who call fair Verona their home. What is it with you and sun-splashed Italy?
Wouldst thou have me change Romeo and Juliet to Ron and Julie who live in Bristol over a pie shop?
Aye. Oh, I would, verily, yes, I like that. And think about it, all of the pies you might sell at intermission. Know what I mean?
That said, I'm glad the Canadian government has rules, legislation, agencies, and funding to support Canadian culture. Okay, our system isn't perfect, but it's pretty good. Let's protect and nurture Canadian culture, and let's contribute to American culture and to the world's. Canadians have the enviable option of being able to cross the border, blend right in, and make those big bucks, or we can stay right here and be part of a vibrant, independent industry. I know what choice I'm gonna make.
Cut.
Did Fox call about my supermodel wrestling idea yet?
Not yet.
Darn.
Celine went and Avril too, Sum 41 and the Guess Who. Todd and Joe did super work, as did Scotty and Captain Kirk. Lauren and Lauren, Adam and Anna, Margot and Mike, Dan and Deanna. Yanks all laughed at our Jim Carrey and asked why KD never married. Shannon Tweed proved very racy, as did Carpentier and Tracy. Vegas took in Paul and Kreskin, and everyone loved Pam Anderson. Brian Adams and rock band Rush, Bonnie Fuller and Mr. Fuller Brush, Austinek, the Polka Man, and the band they called the band. Bulkies like Mitchell and Young, funny guys like Fox and Chong. Glenn Gould played a mean piano, Neo was played by our Keanu. Mrs. Munster, Yvonne DiCarlo, Wayne and Mark and Mario. Hull and Orr went chasing pucks, even Leacock went south for bucks.